Hello and welcome back to our third and final video on data preparation in order to enable domain padding and data densification. In our previous examples, we ended up with something that looked like this. We had our value of 1 and we had our value of 10, and then when we ran just sales on it, we saw our sales total, and in our table calculation, we actually saw the data densification happening, where Tableau drew marks along the padded domain because the table calculation comprehends that padded domain, while the standard calculations don't see it because that value doesn't exist in your dataset. The thing is, both the Excel version and the SQL version had to deal with the fact that we duplicated data. You'll notice in this view, we have a value of 1 and we have a value of 10. Both Excel and Custom SQL went into the dataset and actually wrote a new column that gave every single row a value of 1 and every single row a value of 10. Which is why we have our two values and our duplicate data. However, this actually isn't necessary. All that we need are a combination of 1 and 10 for every single dimension that you're working between. Let me explain that a little bit more. Come to our second chart right here. We'll change it to a line. Now again, this is just going from 1 to 10, but you can visualize what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make it possible to draw a line on our view from point A to point B, from a starting point to an ending point. Those starting and ending points are usually dimensions inside of our data. And so if we can have our dimensions available, and each combination of those dimensions has a value of 1 and a value of 10, regardless of how many there are, we'll actually be able to draw that line from point A to point B because we'll have those two values which we can then create domain padding on. That's a little bit abstract. Let's go in and look at an example. But first off, we're going to have to review really quick what level of detail calculations are. So we'll come in, we'll connect to our data, connect to African Mobile, connect to it just like normal. And this is actually one positive thing about this technique, is you drag in section 2 and you have Tableau's normal dynamic connection. Now, if you add a new column and hit refresh, Tableau will bring it in. If you add in data to the bottom and hit refresh, Tableau will bring in that additional data without having to change anything. So already we're at an improvement over our Excel and Custom SQL methods. But now, like I was saying, we need to review level of detail calculations. So if we look at the combination of our two dimensions, region and segment, we can see that for the Eastern commercial segment, there were 38,000 in sales. Eastern public, 32,000. Eastern residential, 36,000. A level of detail calculation lets you calculate outside the context of the view. So for instance, what if we wanted a value of sales just in the Eastern region of that sales total value, so we could then calculate a percent of total rather than using a percent of total calculation. If you use level of detail calculations, we'll make one really quick. Just a level of detail example. We can say fixed region, give me the sum of sales. The first half of the calculation defines how you want to interact with your dimensions. You can fix, include, or exclude, and then you have your aggregation. If I bring that in down here, we'll now see that it's the exact same because I said fixed on region, so it brings back that total that we can look at that's exactly the same as if segment wasn't in the view. This is important because it lets us return results from calculations as if those values didn't actually exist, or if that detail didn't actually exist in your view. Now, rather than sales, we're going to bring in ID because we're going to create a calculation that lets us go back in and again create that value of 1 and that value of 10 just like we need across these two dimensions. So we're going to call this our 2pad. We'll do if ID is equal to fixed region segment. We'll say minimum of ID, then 1, else 10, and. It was really quick, so I'm going to jump in and explain what I was doing. Shorten this a little bit so we can see our view. So what Tableau is doing right here is it's looking to ID, so if this 10 is equal to, and then a level of detail calculation. It says fixed region and segment, so it's the combination of these two, like we are showing on our view right now, and it's looking to the minimum ID over that range. So we have 10, we have 23, all the way down to 764. So if 10 is equal to the minimum of that, which is 10, that's correct, then it will give us a 1. Else it will give us a 10. So what it's doing is it's creating a calculation that builds out your 1s and your 10s to give you your minimum and your maximum value for your starting point and your ending point along your combination of dimensions without having to duplicate any data. This minimum makes sure that you always get the value of 1, and then everything else gets the value of 10. Now note, this does mean you have to have 2 rows per combination of dimension. There are several data sets and one that we'll work with in this course that don't have that, so you have to use a different technique. But for this one, we have the values of 1 and 10, we have our IDs, and there's multiple values per the combination of region and segment, so we can use this no problem. We'll hit OK, bring that up just to show how it works, drag that out, so we have our 1 where it's equal to the minimum, and then we have 10 for everything else. 2 where it's equal to the minimum is a 1, and then 10 for everything else. Now, if we bring out 2pad, those of you who remember that first introduction lecture, you remember it looked something like this. That's because I was using the different values that we have here. That's because I was using the level of detail calculation in that introduction and that example workbook. But now if we go to 2pad and create our bins, call it padded, you'll see this exact view that should look familiar. Now you'll notice again, we have a different value of sales here. It's not even like the custom SQL was, but that's because your entire view now adds up to your total. So you've got your 387,809 like we were working with before. This makes things easier on the calculation front. So when you run a window sum of these things, you're able to calculate the total for the view, and that will be your true total from your data. In fact, we can do our running total right here. It's going to look very low for these, obviously, because nothing exists in between 1 and 9 other than 1. Then we'll add in 10 and we'll reach our true aggregate. But you'll see that this table calculation enables the data densification that we need along with the domain padding. So this is it. That is the data preparation technique using level of detail. Remember, you have to have 2 records per combination of dimension that you're working with. That is incredibly abstract. I'm not even sure I understood that last sentence, so don't worry about it. We're about to jump into 2 exciting applications of domain padding and data preparation and data densification, sorry. Super excited to go through those with you. Pat yourself on the back. This was not easy. This is a fantastic technique to learn. Congratulations. We'll see you in the next section.